At the end of World War II, the Allied powers divided and conquered Germany into four zones, each occupied by either the United States, Great Britain, France, or the Soviet Union. The same was done with Germany's capital city, Berlin. As the relationship between the Soviet Union and the other three Allied powers quickly disintegrated, the cooperative atmosphere of the occupation of Germany turned competitive and aggressive. Although an individual reunification of Germany had been intended, the new relationship between the Allied powers turned Germany into West versus East, democracy versus communism. In 1949, this new organization of Germany became official, with the three zones occupied by the United States, Great Britain, and France combined to form West Germany. The zone occupied by the Soviet Union quickly followed by forming East Germany. This same division into West and East occurred in Berlin. Since the city of Berlin had been situated entirely within the Soviet zone of occupation, West Berlin became an island of democracy within communist East Germany. With West Germany set up as a capitalist society and experiencing such a rapid growth of their economy, it became known as an economic miracle. With hard work, individuals in West Germany were able to live well, buy gadgets and appliances, and travel as they wished. The Berlin Wall was a barrier that existed from 1961 through 1989, constructed by the German Democratic Republic starting on August 13, 1961.
What was it like visiting West Berlin during the Cold War?
I visited West Berlin a few times during the early 80s by flights and as well as by rail. It was an amazing experience. The city was grandly built, both modern and historical parts intermingling. It was the unquestioned industrial capital of Europe. It was a memorable experience for many reasons, both positive and negative, as with everything else in life. And Berlin was the mainstay of my presentation on Germany when I returned to America. Apart from the wonderful sights and sounds of Berlin, the overriding feature was the tension that one unmistakably felt when you came close to any part of the wall. It was not imagination, it was real and genuinely scary. There was the wall, the electrified barbed wire fences, the watchtowers with scary soldiers carrying weapons, the no man's land near the wall where you were at risk of being shot, and posters of people who had died trying to escape to the west. Sometimes you spotted someone looking at you through glasses, hopefully not attached to a sniper rifle.
What was it like growing up in West Berlin?
I was born after World War II, so I don't remember much from the years immediately following the war and the construction of the Berlin Wall. I mostly remember playing in the rubble of bombing buildings, much to the distress of my mother, who heard constant stories of children being killed or maimed by unexploded munitions in those abandoned buildings. I also remember how hard it was to come by food even after the Berlin blockade, and I often had to eat parts of animals that you wouldn't even think of being edible. As post-war conditions improved, though, my family had more money and better food options and became available.
Nearly the opposite was true in East Germany. Since the Soviet Union had viewed their zone as a spoil of war, the Soviets pilfered factory equipment and other valuable assets from their zone and shipped them back to the Soviet Union. When East Germany became its own country, it was under the direct influence of the Soviet Union, and thus a communist society was established. In East Germany, the economy dragged and individual freedoms were severely restricted. By the late 1950s, many people living in East Germany wanted out. No longer able to stand the repressive living conditions of East Germany, they would pack up their bags and head to West Berlin. Although some of them would be stopped on their way, hundreds of thousands of others made it across the border. Once across, these refugees were housed in warehouses and then flown to West Germany. Many of those who escaped were young, trained professionals. By the early 1960s, East Germany was rapidly losing both its labor force and its population. Having already lost 2.5 million people by 1961, East Germany desperately needed to stop the mass exodus. The obvious leak was the easy access East Germans had to West Berlin. With the support of the Soviet Union, there had been several attempts to simply take over West Berlin in order to eliminate this exit point. Although the Soviet Union even threatened the United States with this use of nuclear weapons over this issue, the United States and other Western countries were committed to defending West Berlin.
What was it like living in East Berlin?
Okay. Life in East Berlin was different. In East Berlin, almost every aspect of life was regulated. It was much poorer than the West, but the East started at a lower level of economic development to begin with. This caused East Berlin to receive lower pay, longer work hours, and the quality and quantity of goods were limited. The main thing that always bothered me was the restrictions on travel to the West. I wanted nothing more than to travel there as much as I had before the time of the wall. It was clear West Germany had better economic conditions, and therefore many people wished to live there because of that.
What were your initial thoughts when the wall was being built?
Once the wall began to be built, I knew that I would not be able to experience the fun of the West ever again, or so I thought. I was devastated and did not exactly know what to think. At the time, I was only 13, so most things seemed like the end of the world to me. I knew that I would never be able to play with the friends I had made in West Berlin, and as a kid, that really gets to you. That was the main thing running through my mind when I learned about the wall and that there would be no more adventures to the West. I could not bear being forced to say goodbye to all the friends I had made. In the 1950s, Khrushchev predicted, "We will bury you." But in the West today, we see a free world that has achieved a level of prosperity and well-being unprecedented in all human history. In the communist world, we see failure, technological backwardness, declining standards of health, even of the most basic kind, too little food. Even today, the Soviet Union still cannot feed itself. After these 4 decades, then, there stands before the entire world one great and inescapable conclusion: freedom leads to prosperity. Freedom replaces the ancient hatreds among the nations with community and peace. Freedom is the victor. And now the Soviets themselves may, in a limited way, be coming to understand the importance of freedom. We hear much from Moscow about a new policy of reform and openness. Some political prisoners have been released. Certain foreign news broadcasts are no longer being jammed. Some economic enterprises have been permitted to operate with greater freedom from state control. Are these the beginnings of profound changes in the Soviet state? Or are they token gestures intended to raise false hopes in the West, or to strengthen the Soviet system without changing it? We welcome change and openness, for we believe that freedom and security go together, that the advance of human liberty can only strengthen the cause of world peace. There is one sign the Soviets can make that would be unmistakable, that would advance dramatically the cause of freedom and peace. General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity from the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.